Cool, there we go. All right, yeah, so my name's Paige Webb. I'm the one that harasses everyone with all the emails and invites for the meetings. I have a bit of a different background to most people in the group. I don't actually work in any services for families, but I am doing a PhD looking at the influence of methamphetamine use on family relationships. So I'll be presenting some of that work today, one of my first studies from my PhD. I'm about 2 years into my journey, so also at the tail end, like Claire is. Just get my slides going. Why won't you let me see my slides? So just give me a second. Showing the screen that you need to see, but not the screen that I need to see, so that's not very helpful. All right. I think this one should be good. Yeah, okay, cool. Oh, sorry, now my Zoom screen is going. All right, here we go. So yes, as I said, I'll be presenting on the first study from my PhD project today, which involves some qualitative interviews with family members of people who use methamphetamine. And yeah, as I said, this was conducted at NDARC, which is part of UNSW. Actually, I don't know if I did mention that before, but I'm doing my PhD at NDARC. So Julie's already given a great acknowledgement of country, but I will just add that this work was primarily conducted on the lands of the Jurek and Guringai people, which is where I'm joining you from today. And just also to pay my respects to all First Nations people and acknowledge their connections to land and water, and extend that respect to any First Nations people that might be joining us today. So I'd also like to acknowledge a few people that made this study possible. Most importantly, all of the participants who trusted us with sharing their stories in participating in the study. I'd also like to thank the research team that was involved, and also acknowledge the advisory group that I formulated for this study, which involved service providers and people with lived and living experience. So as we all know, having a family member who uses substances regularly can influence family dynamics and functioning. The person using drugs can become the focus of the family, and difficulties with communication are quite common. The family relationships may reduce in quality, leading to distress for the whole family. And all the family members also usually experience a lot of stigma from extended family members, friends, the wider community, and sometimes from service providers as well. So given the association between methamphetamine use and certain interpersonal behaviours, such as agitation and paranoia, it is likely that use of this drug in particular has specific influences on family dynamics. Past research on families in the AOD context has usually focused on the parent-child relationship. So either exploring the impact of parental drug use on children, or on the experience of being a parent of someone who uses drugs. Less is known about the experiences of other relationship groups, and to our knowledge, only 2 previous studies have explored the experiences of various family members of people who use methamphetamine specifically, which is these 2 down here. So the current study adds to this literature by focusing on the influences of methamphetamine use on family relationships from the perspectives of multiple family roles. So to do this, we conducted semi-structured, open-ended interviews with 19 family members from across Australia. We used the family drug support definition of family, friends, and anyone who cares, and all participants were adults who self-identified as a family member of someone who uses methamphetamine. Most of the participants were recruited through family drug support, as well as Facebook advertising and word of mouth. All interviews were conducted over Zoom or over the phone between June and August last year, and they lasted for an average of 55 minutes, and all participants were reimbursed $50 for their time. All interviews were then auto-recorded, transcribed, and analysed with Brown and Clark's thematic analysis in vivo. Sorry, I just realised there's some chat. Okay, it's all good. So most of the family members in this sample were female, straight, and living in Victoria. No participants had recently used methamphetamine themselves. And despite employing purposive sampling to recruit a range of family roles, about half of the sample were mothers. As I'm sure a lot of you are aware, this is pretty typical of family studies, and we were still able to recruit people identifying as siblings, partners, as well as a father, which was a good find because that's quite rare, as well as a close family friend of someone who uses methamphetamine. And half of the sample had also received some support from family drug support prior to the study. So just a few caveats before I moved on to the qualitative results. Firstly, the family members were naturally unaware of their exact patterns of use of their person, and most of those who were interested in participating in this study were likely to have some kind of negative effect of their person's drug use. And as I mentioned, half of them were seeking support for these impacts. So just to qualify that these results won't necessarily generalize to other families or other patterns of drug use. I'll also be sharing some quotes on the next few slides that I won't be reading out, so you can read them out in your own time. And just a note that all of the names are pseudonyms as well. So when discussing how they first became aware that their person was using methamphetamine, most families described physical and behavioural changes such as mood swings or weight loss. Family members were often only able to attribute this to methamphetamine use after confronting their person. And at this stage, families felt like they were no longer dealing with the real person. They felt as though their person had become someone whom they couldn't relate to or connect with anymore. And this was reflected in the frustration they felt when interacting with their person, as they often didn't know how they would react at any given time. And Zara's emotional quote here highlights the despair she's experiencing in perceiving losing her daughter to methamphetamine use. Family members experienced grief in a number of areas. They mourned the person their loved one used to be and the connection they previously shared, which they perceived to now be lost. Families felt helpless in watching their person going through difficult times and feeling unable to help them. Witnessing acts of self-harm in particular were devastating for family members, and many were concerned over their person passing away. Families also mourned the potential future that they previously wished for their person, a future that family members felt was no longer possible. They perceived the loss of this future was not only accounted for, the perceived loss of this future was not only accounted for by the psychoactive effects of the methamphetamine use, but also on the social limitations that methamphetamine-related stigma would place on them for the rest of their lives. The families usually went through an initial period of hyper-focus on the drug use and often felt that they could fix it if they found the right treatment. This period was associated with a range of emotions, including shock, disappointment, dread, and despair. Interactions with their person centered on imploring them to seek support and treatment for their substance use. And families also frequently checked in with their person on how they were doing, which was often interpreted as nagging. Conversely, family members lamented the constant demands for money and the verbal abuse that they often received. Overall, these types of interactions led to increased strain and tension in these relationships, and families grieved the absence of the loving and supportive conversations they used to have with their person. Family members felt that the influence of methamphetamine use on family dynamics was all-consuming. Family life was described as chaotic, with an atmosphere of uncertainty and concern. Unexplained absences of the person using methamphetamine were common, as were confrontations between them and other family members. This led some family members to feel uncomfortable and sometimes unsafe in the home. Some participants saw their workplace as a welcome distraction from this chaos. Most participants, however, experienced a reduction in their ability and motivation to go to work. Some of them had poor decision-making skills, struggled to focus, or just had no desire to get up and go. This meant that many of them had to take time off from work. As well as relief from work for some family members, other participants received a reprieve when their person entered residential rehabilitation. The initial rehab episode was met with joy, relief, and pride, and families were optimistic about what this meant for the future of their person and the rest of the family. When their person eventually began using methamphetamine again, however, these feelings of elation quickly morphed into disappointment and distress. This cycle often repeated many times, and families eventually lost hope for this potential future. Levi here described his experiences of his brother entering and exiting rehab as an emotional roller coaster. After experiencing these influences over family life for a period of time, participants began to establish boundaries around their interactions with the person using methamphetamine. These boundaries were in an attempt to minimize the negative consequences that they were experiencing, while still maintaining a relationship with their person. Limiting the provision of social support and restricting their access to the family home were common. Despite knowing these boundaries were necessary and beneficial, though, it was not an easy process and was definitely took a significant emotional toll on family members. And this one Julie might find particularly interesting. Relationships between the person using methamphetamine and their siblings were quite complicated. Siblings expressed concern, compassion, and frustration in these relationships, and they tended to resent their sibling for monopolizing their parents' attention, and often felt that their sibling should know better than to use methamphetamine. Siblings' emotions were also conflicted by the distress they witnessed their parents experiencing, with some acting as a physical buffer during altercations within the family. This placed parents in the difficult position of feeling forced to intervene and mediate the relationship between their children, while also trying not to take sides. Parents expressed the desire for their children to have a closer relationship, but acknowledged the emotional upheaval that siblings experienced. All participants described being judged, blamed, and criticised for their person's substance use. Many family members had lost friendships after disclosing their person's use, leading to a reluctance to reach out to others in the future. Those that did reach out often received unwarranted, unhelpful, and sometimes harmful advice, generally along the lines that their person should just stop using or that the participants should just cut them off. These experiences of stigma were especially felt by mothers, who were frequently blamed for their child's drug use and sometimes even blamed themselves. Overall, many participants described feeling socially isolated in association with experiences of stigma. Family members who did receive support from others, such as Florence here, spoke about how beneficial these positive interactions were. By the time of the interview, most participants had a more optimistic outlook on their family life. Participants had developed a greater sense of resilience and learned the importance of prioritizing themselves. Although previous experiences of stigma made some participants initially reluctant to seek support for themselves, those who eventually did found it hugely beneficial for the whole family. Support group meetings allowed participants to share with others going through similar experiences, enabling them to appreciate that they were not alone. These support groups also empowered family members to change how they communicated with their person, leading to stronger, healthier relationships. This is reflected in Zara's change of perspective from when she had originally described her daughter's drug use on the first slide of this presentation. So on to conclusions and future directions. A central finding of this study was that experiences of stigma and discrimination underscored all of the experiences participants discussed. The initial experience of their person becoming other coincides with their exclusion from society. Family members experienced fear and grief over what this exclusion meant for their person and the rest of the family. Experiencing this level of distress and stigma was overwhelming for family members who felt a detrimental impact on their home and work lives. These findings were similar to studies of family members who use other substances, including opioids, but it is possible that in Australia there might be higher levels of stigma associated with methamphetamine specifically, given the media sensationalism that's happened over the last decade. I don't know if you remember the ICE Destroys Lives campaign and things along that vein. But obviously, this couldn't be assessed in this study. The distress that families experienced was also compounded by their reluctance to seek help for a fear of being further stigmatised. Family members also often only found these supports when they were searching for drug treatment options for their person. So I think awareness of these services can definitely be improved in this population. Family support service not only improve the well-being of the individual family members, but also improve the quality of life of the whole family. Family support services are tailored to address the needs of family members in their own right, not just their role in supporting their person to reduce their drug use. Just to reiterate that there's a need to improve the awareness of these services to assist families in getting support earlier on in their journey. Thank you for listening. Happy to hear any comments or questions that you might have.
Thanks, Paige. That was great.
Thanks, Julie.
Really resonates with me. I'm just wondering, you're asking if anyone has any questions, Paige?
Yeah, or comments or anything you want to chat about.
Does anyone have any comments or that they'd like to?
I mean, thank you, Paige, for your wonderful presentation and our appreciation for your PhD. We've been waiting for people like you for a long time. For me, there was just an incredible constant reiteration of everything we do know. And I have to point out, Family Drug Support's family journey that many people have adopted, that it does actually directly reflect a paralleled stages of change for parents. I just wanted to make a quick question about the interviews that were great. Were those people that were interviewed, do you know the average age of the loved one that they were talking about? Was there a cross section of young people with parents and older people, or was it?
That's a great question. I haven't actually looked into that specifically. Most of the parents who were coming in sort of had maybe late 20s children. Yeah, and I think, I'd probably say around 20s is probably that.
And that's good to know. And I think it's really important too, because there's very difference in working in a residential where you have more of a captive audience as opposed to the revolving door that we kind of are watching Anna's head go off right now. I know. Which is why this is so good, because and also the idea of stigma. I'm not sure if people are actually aware, but I sit on the practice leadership group for NADA, and we are actually involved with AIC and everything, developing a charter for the reduction of stigma. Because the biggest barrier is that parents come in and regurgitate the same rhetoric that has been around for hundreds of years. And if we're going to reduce stigma, we have to absolutely address the language.
Yes, absolutely. You betcha.
So at the end of the day, and I love all the different programs, but as a sector, we have to look at, that looks great. What does implementation look like? But again, Paige, I mean, what you've done is you've captured and identified. We have thousands of pieces of qualitative information from assessments and feedback from parents for years.
Yeah.
And what you've done is captured all of that, and well done.
Thank you. Yeah,
absolutely.
Great piece of work, Paige. Yeah. And Jelaine, did you want to say anything? I can see you're there. Hello.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. No, just thanks, Paige. That was great. And I guess what Belinda's just said shows that the service providers know this stuff, but we need to get it into the evidence base, and by doing the research, that's what you're doing. So, great job.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd echo that. Thanks, Jelaine. It's quite true. We sort of know, but it's when it's getting all pulled together and going into the evidence base it'll make a difference. Pauline, did you want to say something? I can see your microphone's not muted.
Really good, Paige. Can I just say that everything that you've reported is exactly the same as in New Zealand, and actually it's interesting because we could have taken any drug and the results would have been almost exactly the same. 2/3 of the calls that we get are around alcohol, and you could have said exactly the same things around alcohol. So I I really think that what you've done is very good and very applicable worldwide.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'd say that too, Pauline, and I think Paige and probably Claire as well. There's a lot of dovetailing with our research because stigma was identified. I identified stigma as well in my research, but also the other thing that's interesting too. I think the research that came out of the UK many years ago. I think they were identifying that people who seek help for a loved one or focal person, as Pauline calls them, they don't do it for like 8 to 11 years after. And Anna's nodding, so I'm guessing that's an Australian, possibly.
Yes,
Do
no,
you mean
and
the mean average of when they actually access treatment is about if they're so they've engaged in use, it's 18.
Belinda, no, not about the person, but about
the
the
family.
engaging in services. Absolutely. There's a really long lead time because of shame and stigma, and because of that idea of we don't think it's that big a deal. It's just a phase. It's just experimentation. We can sort this out. Let's keep it in the family. Let's not talk about it, right? And we go into secondary denial and all that big stuff until there's a point where we go, right, we need to deal with this. And it normally comes through, a crisis moment when our, child has an accident or, adult children. When I say child, I mean our person using, thinking about mums and dads in this instance, and the grandparents, of course.
Yeah.
But
I guess is that one of the things, Paige, that you've identified as well, that and I think I've heard a lot of people already say this today, that families need assistance in their own right, but maybe their attention initially is on the person using.
Yes, of course. And also that lest we forget, the person using substances is in clinical landscape is the scapegoat of a dysfunctional family. So family pathology feeds in to a lot of programs that are out there for family inclusive practice. So people don't want to go and hear that. They don't want to go and sit in a space where they go, yeah, well, it was about my divorce, it was about my whatever. And of course, for growth and change, we all need to own our stuff and, engage in wonderful therapeutic practice. But while families are grappling with the grief and the fear, Paige, you did such an amazing presentation on exactly what and I would say every single family member that comes through our doors, they're engaged families, they're not disengaged families. And that's a different conversation again. With our families that are engaged, they are wanting support. It still takes them a long time to get there because, as I said, experimentation, we can sort this. It's just it's age and stage thing. But then they come in, and I was thinking this, Paige, from the message that in your study, and the families that you've been talking to, yes, they have access supports, and maybe we one of those support services that they accessed. How terrific! Whoever they access, terrific. And we go, okay, we share that good information, self-care, and boundary setting and all the good communication strategies. And I love the way Dr. Pauline, you said, cool the temperature down in the room for the families so that we are lessening that family domestic violence stuff that goes on. But and here's the thing that I think we all elephant in the room, the system limitation that we have right now to hold people when they are going through methamphetamine psychosis is immensely problematic because we can do all of this wonderful work out in the sector to go, here, guys, here's yourself, here's some good, wonderful education, some, safety planning and all the stuff that we all do. But then what do we do? How do we manage? And we've just signed an MOU, and this is very exciting. Sorry, for with the early psychosis team through Royal Brisbane Hospital. Our flyers and our posters are on the walls in the emergency departments for early psychosis team. How exciting, because that message, Paige, that you said we need to share this information, we need to, family support needs to be out in the sector. That's what we're up against.
Yeah, and it's the isolation. And I think, Mark, thanks, Anna.
Brilliant, Paige, amazing, Paige.
Yeah.
Great job.
And Mark, did you want to, I can see you put a comment in, but did you want to speak to it? You put a comment into the chat, but did you want to speak to it?
No, it's just an experience I hear from a number of families that I didn't know this service existed. I didn't know this help was available. And, we do lots of media and print media and things like that. But the reality is, I think most people don't see these sort of things because they're not looking for it. So they kind of gloss over, flick over the ad in a page or something like that. But when they're actually confronted, and I think it's really is interesting to look at that 8 to 11 years that you were talking about, Anna, in terms of time before they seek help. I think that's really interesting in how we better try and meet people earlier, and then letting them know that this stuff's available at an earlier stage would be, I think, offset, because, the majority of times people come to services like ours is because they're in crisis. Things have really escalated.
Yes.
And, so it's a lot of backpedaling.
Yes.
And I think that research actually came from Jim Orford, I think. Jim Orford and Richard Velleman.
I think we also saw that we did a Smart Family and Friends feasibility trial a couple of years ago. And I think for all the participants, the average time to help seeking after finding out about their loved one's drug use was about, I think it was 11.6 years, which really fits with what everyone's been saying as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what's interesting though? We've had a lot of younger parents come in, the engaged families that are looking for a solution through Google search. So they come in that way, and they want us to fix it, but they want education, information, and then of course when they sit in circle and they see different postcode, different trauma story, different family constellation, everyone's different, but we're all still here. The freedom in that recognition is so empowering, because all of a sudden they start talking and they start sharing, and then we go, okay, can't do much about the past, but by Joe's we can change the future. And that there's the run into amazing change and support. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. And I think it's not very linear, is it? Like, we could apply the stages of change model, as you suggested, Linda, and the families, how the family comes to reaching out. But it's amazing how all the different systems actually affect people, I think. Because when you look at the stigma, the grief and loss, the isolation, the fact that the drugs are illegal often as well, which is going to increase the stigma. There's so many systems that are impacting on the individuals. Yeah, Pauline, what were you going to say?
I was just going to comment on Paige's presentation. I really love the way the language used, Paige. Language absolutely matters. We never use terms like addict or addiction or clean or dirty or anything like that. It's actually it's so not evidence-based. And all the work done by Professor David Best at Derby University around CHIME and around what happens for people to recover. It's all around the social connection, and it's all around using language that's going to be helpful. So I really commend you, Paige, on the way that you presented the language, because that is, for our service, all our training, all our accreditation of practitioners, that we never hear them use terms like that. And it's so helpful. And we see some, one of the things that we're seeing at the moment is when people do, there'll be other programs as well, but we use the 5-step. When we've got 1,500 sessions that we've got the data on now since we started using a 5-step, what we're finding is that 51% of the focal person actually changes their behavior because the family have done the 5-step 3 months previously, because we actually do that that data collection, and that just shows the real importance of families having the right evidence-based information and being able to connect socially so I could go on for hours, but that's I really admire that people are starting to use correct language.
Yeah, and it feeds in, doesn't it?
It's the biggest barrier to treatment. The biggest barrier to treatment is stigma. And stigma attaches to workers. I mean, I don't tell people what I do when I'm not working. And I think I went in and did training at one of the hospital's facilities recently to talk to their nurses about language and how that's a barrier for treatment. And we have, in many ways, we're about 50 years behind mental health. I think the other thing too, I just wanted to say is that, for us for a long time, we've never advertised because we couldn't possibly deal with the influx. So there's been, there's a lot more happening now, but back then it was Family Drug Support and us and maybe some other ones in other interstate. So the other thing that we've got to look at is, if we build it, they will come. So the main thing is as well is that people are aware of their own limitations. You don't just become a family therapist. We call it backseat family therapy here, Julie. That's because 80% of our parents are dealing with their children being quite violent, and it would be very inappropriate to do that. So, it's just the stigma stuff. I think there's a lot of work with the charter that's happening. But to me, it's like, get all the information, but the delivery and the implementation to help people understand. So we do the 6-week paving ways, and then we do post work. And the paving ways is the stabilisation, and the post work is the implementation.
Yeah. Thanks, Belinda. I think when I listen to people talking in this group, and the thing I like about it is how passionate everyone is. There's a lot of energy that comes with all that passion.
It's a desperation. It's a use of desperation.
No, it's wonderful. It's wonderful, and it is needed, and it's been needed for a long time. And it's just fabulous that there's such good research going on, and by Paige and Claire, but also I'm guessing over at the Matilda Centre as well, Jessica. So, and I know Al-Anon's done some research as well. That we're going to hear from Ros at the next meeting. Is that right, Ros?
Yes, Helen will be back then too. She's at our international convention at the minute. Yes, we can present our membership survey next time, which shows one of the interesting things, can't think of the exact number, but the improvement in the person's life, the affected, not the affected person, but the family members before Al-Anon and after Al-Anon, and after Al-Anon, the graph goes way up. Just being able to deal with life and all of the relationships in that.
Yeah.
But yes, we really believe in stabilising the family member, and awareness is, we try our hardest all the time, and this is why we're here really, is helping with awareness, but we don't really have the funding or the money, because we rely on our own money and don't get funding, because that would dilute our services. If getting funding would dilute our message, and we would need to start not doing our primary purpose, which is to help the families, but heading off into sourcing funding all the time and having stacks of people having just to do that alone, and that diverts our energy. So it's against our traditions to do that. So we rely on ourselves. So we find ways of doing where the charities get free advertising and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Do the best we can.
Yeah. Thanks.
Conferences. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for all their kind words on the presentation, and definitely around the language, there's been about 50 iterations of the paper that I'm writing every time working on the language, because it seems to be you can always write things a little bit better. And to answer your question, Mark, there will be a paper when I manage to get someone to publish it. I'm hoping to resubmit in the next couple of weeks. So once it does get published, I'll definitely circulate that for everyone. And yeah, just to go back to what we were talking about on like the length of time for people to get treatment, everything that everyone mentioned was definitely resonated with this sample as well. I didn't specifically ask how many years it had been until they reached, it was primarily family drug support for this presentation. I just tried to not make it sound like I was too devoted to family drug support by putting them all over the presentation. Tone down a little bit of the bias, but no, it was definitely family drug support that I was talking about, and all the participants were so grateful for the help that they got there. But yeah, it definitely took them a while to make contact with the support group, and a lot of it was exactly as was mentioned. They were Googling, what can I do for my person, what rehabs, what treatments are available, and family drug support just happened to pop up as well. And they went, oh, maybe I do need support, maybe I should talk to someone. Which obviously was great, but yeah, if we can get that to happen sooner before, some of the impacts that we've been discussing have occurred, it would definitely be great. Yeah.
Makes
Very
sense.
hard to do. It's very hard to do pre-work. As you all know, I've been at STEC for an extremely long time, and every time we try and do some proactive stuff, because there's always a focus on early intervention. I'm not saying that's not important, but there's plenty of people that are in that space. I'm more interested in when you cannot drug proof a person, so you can talk to the giraffe, you can do all of that at school, but drug use is a perfect storm and a result of that. And I think that we also have to be mindful that no matter what prevention is done, because I find that we will do talks for parents and you'll get 3 turn up, and they do not bang on your door. Then they're banging your door down when their 14-year-old is disappearing for 4 days, and it's very hard in a time where there's a plethora of things that everyone's got to get right. It's very difficult for families, and I think it is great if we can if we reduce stigma. Imagine if we spoke about this just as a health issue,
It makes me think, Belinda, I just wonder what's going on in some of the countries for families where they've legalised drugs.
Well,
It'd be really interesting.
Yeah, and I do follow a lot of that policy. I mean, at the end of the day, the illegality, your molecules don't decide what's illegal, we do. And it's not the drug, it's your relationship. So it depends on the different types of drugs.
Yeah, I'd just be curious to see what's going on with stigma in say,
it's massive. I mean, you look at the stuff in America, it's full on.
Yeah, but where drugs, where they've taken the focus away from
like Portugal,
European countries.
Portugal. I would be interested to see what happens with the family, because I think it makes a lot of sense that it would take a while for families to go, oh, do I need to do something for me because I'm feeling quite stressed about all of this? Because when you've got someone in your family who's not okay, of course you put your attention on them. It makes perfect sense, particularly if you're the mum, because mothers have that job of making things better.
Yeah, and the only time they don't take a long time is when they've got a 15-year-old who is actually using problematically. So they're in the same parallel process as the young person's stages of change. So they come in going, how do I fix my child? We don't advertise, come and have a good look at yourself.
Oh, sorry.
What were you just saying, Anna?
I was just going to say that, the work with FDS, it's a gentle invitation for self-reflection. And then we pass it on to the experts, right? That's what FDS does. We catch the families, we keep, an open meeting people where they're at, wherever they're at, so they can come in and out and in and out over the longevity of their person's journey. And we bat them on to the experts once, when they want to, but when they need to, and when they feel safe enough to. But it's almost as though FDS is an organisation which neutralises the stigma and is a conduit for kindness, I guess, to make people feel safe to be able to talk about it. And then they reach out and get support with the experts.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we sit, I think, in the whole thing. Anyway.
It's a lovely.
And they come back to you. And they come back to you, Anna.
And they come back.
I know for us, when we've worked with them extensively, and
Yeah.
we can't do that forever,
Yeah.
that family drug support is our go-to for them to be able to
Right.
reiterate the learning.
Right. And that's it.
Yeah.
Till the
And
day we die, hey, ongoing lifelong learning for every single one of us.
yeah,
That's the message we give.
yeah, lovely. Yeah,
So, Rob, did you have something you wanted to say?
yeah, good point, Paige.
We're all just busy chatting away. Sorry,
We
Rob.
can't see Rob.
On mute.
You're on mute. Yeah.
Thank you, and even better, a second time, Paige.
Thanks, Rob.
You always see and learn different things. Yeah, we had a similar experience with our research we've done around, obviously, the predominance of women and mostly mothers who are involved, and just interesting reflections on how to engage men, and there was one father in your study, and we know that fathers and men are involved, but often vicariously or on the outer, and they let others do their bidding. But it does raise a question we're always seeking to sort of try and get our heads around. And the other thing too, it's interesting when we talk about the length of time families try to manage things before they actually engage in formalised support or a support, whatever that might be. And yet, conversely, a lot of the research knows that people go through their AOD journey without engaging in formalised treatment and move on. And I wonder, you'd expect, therefore, that there'd be a relationship with that as a family process. And I don't know of any research around that. Quite a large percentage of people who have AOD issues in their own journey don't engage in formalised AOD supports. And so, conversely, I'd imagine that would be the same with families too. Different from those who have grappled with it for 8 to 11 years before they think, I really can't do this anymore, and they've hit a brick wall or something terrible's happened.
Yeah.
What continues to happen, and then they engage.
Did we get, I think there's a lot of people, like it's quite high, the spontaneous remission.
Yeah.
It's like about 70% or something.
57.
I think it's higher from some of the research I've referenced in my paper. It was actually higher, but they're old papers, Pauline. I have to acknowledge that they're very old. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, actually, about what goes on for the families in those situations. But I think also that some of those reports where they talk about the spontaneous remission, it doesn't actually mean the person's never been in treatment or never had contact with a service. It just means that when they remit, when they go into remission, they're not in contact. That's some of the papers I've read anyway.
I think the point that Robert's making, hi Robert,
yeah.
Last saw you in Rotterdam.
Yeah.
Sorry, Pauline, can you speak up? I find it hard to hear you.
Oh, right. Okay.
That's better.
One of the things that you've said about males coming into the support services, one of the things that we found that since we've been delivering most of our services via telehealth, a third of the people who seek support are males, which is very high. And what tends to happen is that the female will apply for the program or for the support, and often right at the beginning, the male will come in, and we have a lot of couples working, especially with adult sons and daughters, who are doing the 5-step program. And this is really, really good because we're delivering it into rural areas. And so when they're doing it on telehealth, if they're the the local doctor or the local nurse or the local teacher, they don't have to step over any AOD threshold. They can actually do this in their own home. And so we're having a lot more males come in to work as a couple for the support.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's so interesting, isn't it? What a different mode of service delivery. Rob, did I get all of your points, or did I go?
No. That's. Yeah. It was more just reflecting on other things as the conversation was going. Yeah. But again, great findings and adding to the insight.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. And I think the father that I did recruit, it was a similar story to what Pauline just described. I think the mother had contacted family drug support. And I think from memory, I received an email sort of from both of them saying that they were interested in the study. And at that point, I already had sort of my quota of mothers. So I said, if the husband is interested, it would be great to interview him. So even in that case, it was primarily the mother who was contacting me. And I think she had gone to family drug support and sort of brought the husband along, which is great. But yeah, if we could find a way to target them as well, it would be great. But yeah, obviously difficult.
I find that in just couple therapy, aside from drug and alcohol, just in family and couple therapy, it's often women who are doing the help seeking. And usually in relationships, there'll be one person that does the reading, and then they're the reader, and they pass that information on to the rest of the family. It's probably, families are unique, very interesting.
And one of the challenges with that as well, Julie, when you're working with the couples and that, is when you start doing this family work, there's the violence and domestic, unspoken, potentially coercive control and domestic violence that's actually happening with that couple. And, it's just so complicated, because when we're doing group, particularly when they've separated, and they might go, we get on really well. And then you've got to really, and that's why assessment is important for any clinical work, because you can put people at risk by putting them into rooms or putting them together. And we see so much violence with young males that we often see a correlation between that to the kind of, family dynamic. And these are all the complexities that come with doing this type of work. And we've had so many more men now. We used to get none. Now we get them all the time. We have a lot of men coming through. And fathers are just so important, and men will sit in a I'm not a male, I won't claim any of that, Robert and other males on here, but the levels of shame that men sit in, they're ashamed of shame, and it's a really important area. We have 2 male workers now, and we're literally looking at how we work with those fathers in relation to their role modelling and the stuff they're doing, like men's behaviour change kind of stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Belinda. Claire, did you want to add anything else to the discussion today? Because I'm aware that you've got.
I've just been typing some notes for us all. But I think really echoing what everyone said. I think it's a really significant issue that's coming up, I think, in the media a lot at the moment around men's behaviour and the DV and these cycles of, again, role modelling and things like that. I think we definitely are going to be a really important role in this movement as well, in the work that we're doing with families, and it's really cool to see. I think it's so interesting, Pauline, as well, what you were saying about when things went online and that increased up to 30%. That's just really, I think it's really exciting as well to be able to see that kind of uptake with a fairly simple change in the flexibility in the way that we're doing things. So it's, looking quite hopeful, I think.
Yeah. And Pauline, do you attribute that to shame for the men, or do you just attribute it to excessive?
I'm not sure if I would say it's shame. I think that often women are quite proactive about reaching out for support.
Yeah.
But the men that come on to do the couples that come on are really the difficulty is with reputational protection. And that's really big, especially in rural communities and even in cities and towns around professions and things like that. So we have lawyers, doctors, teachers who come on that would never actually seek support, but because it's delivered confidentially in their own home, they can actually do it. And it's so powerful when you get the husband and wife or the partners together working on a program together so that they can actually together move forward. I
feel
like it's a bit of an overgeneralization too, but
Heather, we can't quite hear you. Can you?
there you go. Sorry, I was eating before. I feel like it's an overgeneralization too, but traditionally women have been more likely to juggle work to attend kid appointments, and the online thing makes it much more accessible, I think, for men that have traditionally, they've had to go to work, and women's jobs have been easier or or not, but they've been more likely to make pediatrician appointments or doctor appointments, you know, right through their kids' lives, and it continues that that's seen women's domain.
Yeah, yeah.
Can
I
I
mean,
say also that we find often the parents will come and the men will only last 1 or maybe 2 sessions, and they seem to feel that they don't get it, and they want to. They haven't got through we can fix it ourselves yet, or there must be something I can do. And often you even just feel that they just want to do more discipline of the child, adult child even. They feel and I know that's a generalization and it's an old-fashioned method, but the ones that do very occasionally come seem to still have that around them in their thinking.
Ros, thank you for that. I think, Ros and Heather, you're drawing attention to that sort of gendered analysis of what goes on in relationships, and that often men are the fix-it and the woman is in the role of, or the mother is in the role.
I mean, with what we've seen in the field, that idea of non-gendered roles with that, you know, hard line or soft line approach of control, we've seen that it can be quite non-gendered. Like a mother can be very, very much.
Oh, yeah, of course. I think there's always exceptions, Anna. I'm just saying that if you're in the family therapy couples research area,
yes,
typically you would see these very typical sort of responses, but they're not. Doesn't mean that there's not exceptions, of course.
No, because it seems to be that, like, we've had quite an onslaught of partners, male partners. I had a dad here last night who has been to 2 one-on-one sessions and has signed up for Stepping Stones, and we are seeing men coming in. So I think it's so valuable for us to consider the diversity of all of it.
And and I think that's your message today, isn't it? It's diversity, and there's not one answer.
Right.
There's
yes.
generalizations. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Look, who knew we were going to go this be for so long? It's such a rich topic, isn't it, really? But unless there's any other comments, I'll probably wind it up here. Paige, did you want to say anything else at all?
No, just again to thank everyone for their positive feedback, and yeah, it's definitely validating all the nods and everything going around and how it obviously with the work everyone's doing. It's great to hear.